Yeah.
So first things first, let me start off with the things I absolutely love about Ableton. When it comes to a browser, this whole system down the side here is probably the best implementation of a browser that I've ever used in any DAW actually. And being able to add your own custom folders in this kind of neat way with the icons, like other people tried to do it, but the way in which it's implemented inside Ableton, truly incredible. Being able to add the colors to things so that when you add a color to something, it then comes up in your favorites and you can quickly find whatever that thing is. So my favorite synths, I added orange. My favorite quick plugins, I added yellow. My favorite drum sounds, I added like purple. Being able to find these things really fast, I absolutely love this about Ableton. I do love how you can see like an overview of your plugins down at the bottom. However, I absolutely hate this mixer, and I've always hated this mixer. And to show you how much I hate this mixer, I actually forget it exists. I don't think I ever click this mixer. I sooner highlight everything here and then just turn down the volume here. But what I found is working in Ableton, I have to be like way more diligent with my gain staging because it's so easy for me to just fall into bad gain staging and bad gain structure and then having to like turn everything down in the end. The other thing that I think is great about Ableton is in general, it feels really fast. And what I mean by that is just loading things up feels really quick. Playback feels really fast. It just feels like super responsive. However, this does come with a downside, which is CPU is way more intensive on Ableton. So if you don't have like a supercomputer, good luck running like massive string library sessions or really intense things because it definitely isn't as CPU efficient as other DAWs. However, something I really hate in Ableton, and I've just lived with it, is down the bottom, you can see velocity in this lane, but you can't change this to see anything else like modulation, polyphonic aftertouch. Like if you have anything else, you have to go over to envelopes. And then not only that, when you go over to envelopes, it doesn't automatically show you what lane is being like automated or like being used. It kind of gives you this little blue thing to show you and help guide where things could be. But if I have multiple things going, like I have to go and find it, I have to go sustain, then I have to adjust it. And then if I'm using something else, like, I don't know, modulation, then I have to go modulation wheel, then adjust that. But you just can't see multiple automation lanes at the same time. Another thing that I've learned to live with, but having moved over to this new DAW, I've realized how frustrating it is. You just can't like customize shortcuts. There's some like ways around it with like third-party things, but all in all, the DAW is what it is. Learn what it is and how it works. And if you don't want to do that, then screw you because there's no customizable shortcuts. Like that had been something that was frustrating for me. However, I realized with Ableton that as much as I've created some fantastic stuff inside of Ableton, like even if I play you this track,
My God, please help me. My God, I'm on my knees.
so it's not that I have any issue making music in Ableton. Like I find it great making music in Ableton, if I'm being honest. It is really creative. And even recently I did a whole musical, and that's where I found I ran into problems because I was doing a lot of string stuff and automating orchestral stuff within Ableton. Not having those controllable lanes has been an absolute nightmare. But in addition to that, as someone who makes quite a lot of money doing vocal work and vocal production and also mixing, I had a little bit of a workaround for ARA, but there's no ARA integration within Ableton. So if I wanted to tune a vocal, I would have to go here and I would change my sample editor to be Melodyne. So then that way, when I hit edit, it would open up this vocal here. Then I do my changes. Then I go here and I click replace audio. And this is how I was kind of working with Melodyne. However, if I had a bit of like pops and clicks or noises in that vocal and I wanted to use RX, then I have to go here and I have to find RX, change the editor, close this down, then click edit again. And then this way I'll be able to edit in RX. Then I just go file and overwrite original file. I didn't make any changes, so it's not letting me do that. But that's what I would have to do. And that's something that I've been doing a lot because I do a lot of vocal production work. I do a lot of vocal tracking work, and it's really good income, especially on the side. But Melodyne in vocals, like one time I had to Melodyne vocals from scratch. It was an absolute nightmare in here. And then in addition to that, there's no real integrated way to use something like Vocaline easily. So like timing vocals to each other, it's just been a nightmare. In general, audio work has been a bit of a hassle inside of Ableton. But that being said, I did mix all of Leanne Pinnock's debut album, which went #1 in the independent charts and #3 in the UK charts. I mixed the whole thing in Ableton. So it's not that you can't do your job in Ableton. It's just that I've now found, in my opinion, a far superior DAW that enables me to do absolutely anything I could possibly think of. I've actually moved over to Cubase and Innuendo, and that DAW has absolutely everything I could possibly need. Let's check it out. So what is Innuendo/Cubase? Innuendo essentially is a more fuller version of Cubase. However, all of the things I'm going to show you today in terms of music creation are in Cubase. The difference between Cubase and Innuendo is Innuendo has a lot more support for film post-production work. And that is actually the main reason why I had to change DAW. I had the opportunity to work on a film, and in addition to that, to do all of the post-production for a film, be it the sound design and the dialogue mixing and editing and all of these things. There's a file format called an OMF or an AFF file. This is the industry standard when it comes to sending a file from a video editor, which will have all of the footage, but then also all of the audio tracks laid out. It was impossible for me to do any of that work inside of Ableton, and that was the reason why I initially switched. However, the reason why I stayed is because I do believe that this actually has a few things that are just far superior. One of them being the obvious, I finally have a mixer again. I don't know, it's simple, but I really miss not having a mixer, and I love having the mixer. But the main thing I love is actually how you can edit MIDI. So remember I said about the automation lanes. If you take a look down here, I have my velocity showing, but then I also have this automation lane showing. If I want to add another one, for example, for pitch bend, then I can go ahead and I can add one for pitch bend, but it doesn't just stop there. If you actually notice, I can actually see all of the MIDI. Now, most other DAWs can do this. However, it gets messy when it comes to knowing what you're editing. If I click here, Lux Violin, right now you can see these are all dark, but that's because I'm only editing the MIDI for this track. Now, if I want to edit the MIDI for another track, then I can go to Lux Viola and now all of that's highlighted. But if I want to do it simply, as soon as I go to click something to edit, it will darken everything that's not on this MIDI lane. But as you look down the bottom, can you also see that all of these automation lanes are changing depending on what I'm editing? So for someone who loves doing string arrangements, I mean, have a listen. I mean, we could sit and listen to that stuff all day, right? But just being able to do my strings in a great way, I absolutely love this, which brings me on to my next point, which is this thing called track archives. Now, what this enables me to do is, say I like how my strings are set up here, and I love the mix of my strings and all the effects that are on my strings, then what I can actually do is I can go to File, Export, Selected Tracks, click OK, and then I can name it whatever I want. And then what happens is if I'm on a blank session and I want to bring in that group of instruments, then I can actually go to File, Import, I can go to Track Archives, and then when I then click on one of these, it would then show me what I saved when I exported those selected tracks. And I can say, do you know what, I want the string folder, but I don't want first violins, I don't want that, I just want cello, and I want these ones. And I can say when they come in to be on a new track, and I can just hit OK. It will take a little moment because they're big libraries, but it will essentially just load those in at the bottom. And this is a much better way for me to work with my sound libraries, because it's not just saving the individual track state, but if I have a group of tracks, then it's actually saving the folder with the effects on it and then all of the individual tracks, but then also the volume levels of those tracks if I already have it perfectly balanced how I want it. Now, in addition to that, as I mentioned in the other DAW, Ableton, I wasn't able to do Melodyne in an easy and intuitive way, whereas here it's very simple. I can just go to this, I can hit extension, and then I can hit Melodyne. I've already got it selected, which is why it's not letting me select it. But then when I double click this, you will now see that Melodyne is here. Then once I'm done with my Melodyne, I can just go to extensions, make extension permanent, which I highly recommend you do because I learned the hard way. If you change tempo, it actually reanalyzes all of the track, and I lost all of like my pitch editing. So don't do that. But this is an absolutely incredible feature. But then in addition to that, if I want to do something like RX, now they're very cheeky. RX11 doesn't come up in the ARA support. And the reason why they do that is because they actually sell their own thing, I believe, called spectral layers. Now, I don't have the full version, so it's going to come up with a demo nonsense here. We'll get rid of that. But what this enables me to do is to do everything I would do inside of RX, whether it's denoise, I can preview it, hit apply. So if I have pops and clicks, I can do all of that within the DAW without actually needing to buy RX. I can literally buy spectral layers, I believe, for like 100 and something pounds. And then I have all of that built and integrated into this DAW as well. Now, in addition to that, if you're someone who uses something like Vocaline, there actually is an equivalent of Vocaline built into this DAW. I'll show you an example of it right now quickly. Hello, hello, mic check 1 2, hello. And then we'll just mute that so we don't hear it as I record. And I'll be slightly out of time on purpose. Hello, hello, mic check 1 2, hello. So that is a bit of a tough job if we're being honest, because it's quite out of time. So I'm just going to get rid of the clicks at the beginning because I don't want that to be a thing that like makes it decide what's in time and what's not in time. But if I hit this up here, so it says add alignment reference and add alignment target. So this will be my reference because this is the one that's in time. This will be my target because this is the one that's not in time. And then I have match words, which provides best results for identical wording or prefer time shifting. So I'm going to have it to match words. I'm going to hit align. And as you can see, when we play these two together versus how it was before, let me take off the auto tune because that sounds wild, bro. Hello, hello, mic check 1 2, hello. And then I hit align again. Hello, hello, mic check 1 2, hello. So having something like that built into the DAW is absolutely incredible. Another thing, which is a small thing, but I really do love it, is you can customize all of your shortcuts, but you can actually just customize every single thing that you want within this DAW. For example, I have F set up to set all my tracks to this default level. But if I'm working on an individual track, I have Z set up to be able to zoom in on this track. And then when I hit F, it will go back. And then when I hit Shift F, it will then zoom everything so that the whole page is in view. So being able to have like that kind of workflow and those kind of shortcuts. So no matter where I am, Shift F, everything's in view, hit C, Z, edit here, blah, blah, blah. And then Shift F, everything in view, F, everything at my like kind of set size. That's incredible. Also, you have this thing called like sync points, which is dope. Whenever you're working with like swells and stuff, you'll notice that it could be awkward to drag them onto the grid because they don't actually start on the beat because they'll have a swell, a transient, and then a tail, right? But on here, I can actually set my sync point. So for this, I've set the sync point to where that transient hits. And then what that means is actually when I drag this, it doesn't take the beginning of the file as the reference, but it takes my sync point, which means working with like effects risers and things like that is an absolute breeze inside of this DAW. Another thing I absolutely love is you have a built-in channel strip, which is actually really good quality for every single track. If you hit this E, it brings up this channel strip. You have a gate, a compressor, but then you also have different styles of compressor. You have vintage, tube, or standard, and then you have saturation. You have saturation 1, magneto, which is like more like tapey kind of vibe. Like they actually sound really good. Tools is a DSR or an envelope shaper if you want a transient shaper, and then you have limiter as well. So like I oftentimes find myself just using this to work quickly. And then with the EQ in the similar way with Logic, if you just go up here, it's kind of like drag and drop, do what you want. And then on top of that, when you're on the channel strip view, then you can actually go over to this tab, and then this gives you more control of the EQ built in. So this is really fantastic, just being able to work and mix really, really fast. However, one thing I do find annoying, but I think I will come to love, is Command Z doesn't undo everything. Command Z will undo anything on the page. So if I hit Command Z, that will undo that. However, if I do something on a mix level, like on the faders, and I hit Command Z, it won't do anything. I need to hit Option Z. So the controls for undoing the mixer versus undoing the MIDI are separate controls. However, I do think this is something I will grow to love, but having used DAWs for 20 years and none of the other ones working in that way, it is a little bit frustrating and something I'm trying to get used to. Coming back to the audio editing, if I actually hit 8, which brings up my pen tool, I can actually then like drawing different automations for this. So if I go like this, you can actually see the waveform changing in real time. So then when it comes to leveling out vocals and all of these kind of things, it will be an absolute breeze inside of this DAW. And when it comes to editing vocals, it works the same as, I guess, all other DAWs work as well, which is I can hit number 2, which I've set up as this like comp tool. And then as I go through, it will select different things. Right now it's snapping to the grid, but if I go here, I can turn it off, or I've set it up as a shortcut called J, and then I'll just literally be able to like drawing and just comp vocals in the same way that you know that we can traditionally comp vocals. I knew there was something I was missing. Now, the thing I love as well is this functionality called soft quantize. Now, what I'm going to show you, I'm basically just going to show you how it works because it's hard to explain. Okay, we won't use that because I've high-passed everything. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm getting a lot of latency. So this brings me to another point, which is right now I am actually getting a lot of latency. But if I'm having that issue, then I can actually hit constrain delay compensation and it will bypass anything that was giving me the latency, equivalent of like the low latency mode inside of Logic. So here, I've kind of put in my time in, but it's a little bit off, but I don't want to completely quantize it. So what I can do is I can actually set a soft quantize value. So if I don't have soft quantize turned on and I hit quantize, it's just going to do what it usually does. However, if I have soft quantize turned on and I have it at 60%, then when I do this, it's going to slightly do it. And then if I hit it again, it'll do another 60%. But as you can see, like there's still things that are slightly off the grid, which means that when I hit quantize, I don't completely lose my groove. And this is something that I absolutely love within this DAW as well. Another thing which I always forget is actually this top section at the top of the mixer. If I hit this button here, this will disappear. But when I hit it again, it comes back. And what this essentially is another zone where I can put anything. So say I'm like, well, no matter where I'm scrolling, I want all of my effects to be able to be in view. It essentially like splits it into 2. So then, I mean, use your mind, use your imagination. There's so many ways in which that's useful. For now, I have my stereo track at the top and I also have markers at the top. So no matter where I go, I can just go to stereo track and do like changes or whatever there and then come back and then let me turn off delay compensation, or constrained delay compensation so I can bring all my plugins back on. But all in all, like, I mean, I've been making some dope stuff. Like, honestly, no matter what DAW I use, I'm going to be able to make something in it because I love making music. And I think the only DAW I've probably had a hard time in was Cubase before number 14. But since 15, Cubase / Innuendo, this thing's dope. I think I'm definitely going to stay here. I can do everything I want. I can grow into it. I can get more speakers, get surround sound, get Atmos, go crazy, do films. Like, as much as I'm a creative person, I feel like this DAW enables me to access all of that creativity. Now, if you are interested in hearing more of my music, then you can do so by checking out either of these videos and following and subscribing to that channel, because any music I make will always be uploaded to those channels. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you all next time.